What is up, y'all? Welcome in. Adam Kramer and Paige Kuhn here from the No Punts Allowed podcast. And Kramer, we're ranking some wide receivers. So college football obviously has kicked off, but we've got a big weekend this weekend and very much going to be highlighted by some elite wide receivers.
Yeah, and it was one of the themes of last year, right? Not having to wait 2 or 3 years to be immediately productive. Spoiler alert, I think you know where we're going with
Yeah.
that when it comes to a couple of players out there. Also going to be a theme this year, right? It cascades down from the NFL, the importance of that position, and now college football is seeing the same thing. That also does highlight that this is not an easy list to make, by the way. So if we make you mad because your player
Yes.
is not included, your team's not included, just know we probably agonized over it.
We did. And there are some players we are going to mention that did not make the cut of our top 10 that we do want to reference here. There's a few that we want to make notes why they maybe aren't. There are some that aren't even on this honorable mention that we can add into this as well. There's, like you said, there's a plethora of guys that we could have put on this list. The one for me that I want to point out is Evan Stewart, obviously injured. He's a guy that would certainly be in the top 10 if he was not injured.
Yeah, we were debating pre-show like where he would fit.
Yeah.
I mean, he could be as high as 3 or 4. This is a guy
Yes.
that I've just been waiting since Texas A&M for him to explode, and then Concepcion as well, right? Like it's another great fit. Um, what are they going to look like on offense with the quarterback? And so much of this, as we talk about more wide receivers, is going to be what's the offense going to look like? What's the quarterback going to look like? So yes, there is a plethora, probably 25 names that we were sorting through, trying to make it to 10. Stewart is a unique one though, obviously, because of the injury, would have had a vacancy, certainly, I think, in the top 8.
Yeah, Eric Rivers obviously playing last year with a guy that will, spoiler, be on this list somewhere that
Yeah.
transferred out. But also in an offense that maybe isn't necessarily revolving around wide receivers, could play potential in that as well. So let's take a look at the list we did create. So let's start with number 10. And we are going with a guy who is transferring. Shocker. Zachariah Branch, who is coming from USC to Georgia. Georgia obviously looking for a wide receiver that they can rely on. They've made up for it certainly with tight ends that they can rely on. But some numbers from last year: 47 catches with 503 yards. He's also a big guy too, a guy that, like, you know what, in the red zone, this is going to be someone you can throw to and count on. But something that Georgia needs.
Something that Georgia needs. And the question is, how are you going to use him, right? When we saw him burst onto the scene at USC, it was on special teams, which he did a little of last year. Where do they want him to go? Because quite honestly, when it comes to Georgia, they have not exactly thrived using their offensive skill talent. They've had great quarterback play. They've had great running back play. They've had some moments, but they went to the portal. They got a couple of guys. I think the question for Brand, the potential is tantalizing here because we've seen it so much. Now
Yes.
the question is, how are they going to get him the ball? Because like you mentioned, he's a big guy. He can go get it. But I think he's best with just throwing him the ball in space and seeing what he can do with it.
Absolutely. Number 9, we are going with Cam Coleman. Some 2024 numbers: 37 catches, 598 yards, eight touchdowns. Again, another big-bodied guy. He's playing with now Eric Singleton, which allows him maybe to have a little bit more of a role. I think he did a lot for them last year, but this kind of allows for him to kind of set up his own role and in this offense where they do like to take advantage of one-on-one coverage, and he can be that guy.
Yeah, and I think with some of the other players we're going to talk about, Coleman was sort of forgotten, and it was the offense that really struggled. This was the number 5 recruit in the country like a year ago, right? So this is an explosive, big time talent. My question isn't really him; it's what's the quarterback play going to be?
Yeah.
And you and I have been talking about this for weeks. Now we're talking about playing 3 quarterbacks against Baylor. That's not a great start, if we're being honest. Like that's not what you want to hear. I think for anybody, it's probably just coach speak. So for him, it's just get him the ball. And I think, again, this is another player that if Auburn performs the way we believe they can, albeit with a really difficult schedule, he is going to absolutely explode in terms of his stardom.
Yeah, you and I have talked a lot about the potential for Auburn and what they can do offensively, and if they are going to be that team that we know they can be, or are they going to be the team
Yeah.
that continues to maybe lose 4 games this season and not win a big one against one of the tougher schedules in the SEC as well. Next up, we've got Bryant Wesco. A Clemson wide receiver room that is incredibly deep. 41 receptions, 708 yards, 8 touchdowns last season. Incredibly fast. I do want to make a note that at the end of last year, Dabo was talking about his wide receiver class and was saying, yeah, actually, this core has not reached its full potential, which is frightening if you look at the numbers from last year.
Yeah, over 17 yards a catch, right? And you mentioned the emergence of wide receivers. A lot of that is the emergence of Cade Klubnik too. So
Yes.
the part that's really exciting about the Clemson wideouts who are going to be named here is can how much better can they get? Right? They have some holes to fill at running back. I think they're going to be more reliant on the passing game. I think they want to probably keep Klubnik less hits. I, you got a pretty good opportunity to do just that with a guy like this that I think is still underrated somehow. It's going to be a theme that over the next 5, 6 players that in all of the Clemson happenings, a lot of the focus on the head coach and the quarterback, you forget a guy like this who just performed and should probably go over 1,000 yards this year.
Next up, we have number 7, and this is an Ohio State wide receiver. Don't worry, guys, it's Carnell Tate. It is not the other guy. But unfair to Carnell Tate is that he has played with some really very, very good wide receivers and maybe isn't getting the credit he deserves for how good he is. Some numbers from last year: 52 receptions, 733 yards with 4 touchdowns. You have Igbuka off to the NFL, and he's playing with that guy. I don't know if you've heard of him. His name is Jeremiah Smith, who is also really great, but maybe a year for him to carve out a bigger role in this offense.
5-star, again, a former 5-star who's just been kind of biding his time, waiting. Mbuka obviously gone, and now he is going to be in a position to really thrive. There's going to be so much attention on Jeremiah Smith, right? That this is a player that could take full advantage of that. They're going to spread the ball around. You have a new quarterback, so there's a lot of variables here at play. But this is another player because of the various pieces around him has really gone a little bit unheralded. That will change in a big way this year, Paige.
Yes. In the chat, some people disagreeing with our list
Of course.
already. I know we're surprised. No Sirski says Cam at 9 is laughable. Again, this part of why he's low on this list or lower than you would want is probably because we're worried about what his potential could be, not because of him himself, but maybe that offense as a whole, right?
Yes, for sure. And this is the hard part about doing this now because there's some players, and I'll hit on one in a sec, that probably could emerge, right? Like you're sort of betting on potential, you're betting on fit. Lil Smoke says Ryan Wingo not on the list. We were talking about Ryan Wingo before we
Yes.
came on at Texas. I have some questions about Arch just being able to sling the ball around immediately. Ryan Wingo is an amazing young player, and I think has a chance to absolutely be on this list next year. And as a guy that makes a ton of sense if you want to state a case for it. I just don't know if you're able to state that case yet. If you're banking on potential, what they're going to do, absolutely, that's a guy along with this incredible sophomore class of wideouts that has a chance to make a statement.
Yeah, another one, Mason Jr., Nick Marsh, at least an honorable mention. All right, well, you did it for us in the chat. Like we said, this list, we could have probably
It's tough.
done 45 of the top wide receivers in college football, and that's a lot for how the game has sort of evolved, and it speaks to sort of what the game looks like. But let's move to number 6 on our list, and that is Elijah Serat from Indiana. Some numbers from last year: 53 catches, 957 yards, 8 touchdowns, and Kramer. This guy is fast. Like, look, a lot of these guys on this list are fast, but this guy in particular, incredibly fast.
For as big of a story as Indiana was, it's pretty
Yes,
amazing that this is still a player that was not talked about more, right?
absolutely.
18 yards per catch, vastly underrated, I think, in just the overall story. They have a change at quarterback, so Fernando Mendoza now is going to be the one stepping in. It'll be
Yeah.
really interesting for overall performance, but I think the offense page is still going to thrive. So there's a litany of really good, obviously Big Ten wide receivers. We've talked about some. We'll talk about some more. Serat belongs very much at the center of that conversation. And again, would not shock me. 1,200, 1,300 yards. He's that type of talent.
Absolutely. And I think you kind of nailed it there. It is going to be one of those, the question mark you would have is that chemistry with his quarterback and sort of having a new quarterback in there. And if he can, maybe this quarterback will make him work a little less hard, be a little bit more accurate. Who knows? We'll see. We'll find out. Next up, we have Antonio Williams. Again, we've alluded to this wide receiver room being a deep one. Some numbers from last year: 75 receptions, 904 yards, 11 touchdowns. But this guy is incredibly reliable. Maybe a little bit undersized, but somebody that they've leaned on in the past when he was a true freshman to make sure that they had a guy to go to. And again, maybe takes a little pressure off when you've got a bunch of other elite wide receivers playing with you.
Yeah, we use the word gadget player, and I think sometimes that can be like a detriment. But this is a gadget player
Twitchy.
because you can use him in so many places. Ran for a touchdown, right? So the yards per catch not nearly as high as some of the other players we're talking about, but the overall receptions and getting the ball in space, it's sort of like just a safety blanket for your young quarterback, who, by the way, thrived finally last year. If he can break a few of those, short dump down catches, the sky is the limit for this one. So Clemson, I think the problem, if you're a Clemson wide receiver, is the ball is going to be going all over the place.
Yeah.
So it's a good problem to have if you're a fan of the team. And you're right, not the biggest guy, not necessarily a problem at all. There's going to be just tons of opportunities to get him the ball in space.
Absolutely. One of the bigger names in the transfer portal this offseason was Eric Singleton, who is transferring from Georgia Tech to Auburn. By far one of the biggest names that we saw, and someone who we can see excelling maybe a little bit more in an offense that maybe cares about throwing the football a little bit more, but they will establish that run game, don't worry. But maybe not as much as what Georgia Tech was doing. 56 catches for 754 yards. And 3 touchdowns. Also a really fast guy. Thoughts on him in a new offense?
By the way, Georgia Tech has produced some really unbelievably fun players. Jahmyr Gibbs,
yes,
going back a few years. So sorry, Georgia Tech fans, but well done. Yeah, another player that look at carries, like 20 plus carries last year as well. So just someone you could put all over the field. I love that. Over 700 yards in his first 2 seasons. This is why you like Auburn. This is why we like Auburn, because you look at the players and you obviously look at quarterback and you have concerns, but at wide receiver, this is really, really good. Really, really good. If you want to make a case that this is the best duo in the country, you could probably do that. So there are no more excuses for Hugh Freeze, because you've got a guy like this, which is exactly what you want. Now you just need someone consistently to throw them the football.
No excuses, Hugh. We're going to go to the chat for a few points here. Hayden said Denzel Boston cracks the list at the end of the year, but I don't mind him not being on there now. Yes, definitely all depends on how good that team is. And I think a team in the Big Ten that people are maybe not talking about enough that could potentially be a little bit of a chaos maker in the Big Ten.
For sure. Totally agree. At least that one, that was such a polite comment, by the way. Such a polite, hey, I get why you didn't include him,
yes,
but he's
that was the politest chat we've ever received.
Yeah,
so,
very, very
thank
nice.
you, Hayden.
Yeah, shout out to Hayden. No, I mean, this is the struggle you have when you got passed down. I think really the number 3 or 4. I think there's a large grouping of that second tier wideout, not as an insult, that you could really group together, and he certainly was in that mix.
Another comment, Lele says, thoughts on Chase Roberts from BYU. Obviously, change at quarterback super late, not the most ideal thing for a wide receiver. I spoke to him at Big 12 Media Days, and he was like, look, we're just going to do the best we can with whatever comes next and whoever is playing at that position. I think you will have a big year in the Big 12. I also think the guy Bear that they got starting at QB1 is very impressive. He came in, learned a playbook really quickly. I think that BYU offense is going to be a little bit more electric than what maybe people thought when Retzlaff initially departed, because they weren't really looking at this freshman guy that came in from Stanford to play with his brother. That really wasn't the conversation of who was going to be starting for BYU. And now that it is, I do think that offense will be a lot better.
They're going to sling it around. How consistently they sling it around, is TBD, right? The Big 12 is just utter chaos. The week 0 was just a small vantage point into that conference, and a team like BYU, who we're not talking about enough, they've got weapons, and they're going to put them to good use.
Yeah, Devin in the chat says TJ Moore is better than Wesco. All right, there's some rivalry in the same room, which could be possible.
Great problem to have.
Yeah,
by the
right.
way.
Spoiled.
If you're mad because another wide receiver is not being mentioned, but that is truly, as we're talking about teams that we think could win the Natty, that's the kind of conversation that gets that gets that going a bit, because they have a plethora of riches at the position.
Um, this person is really challenging me with a reverse name. It's Pobody's Nerfect.
Good
So
enough.
nobody's perfect. 71. Love it. Does Makai Lemon get more looks since Branch is gone now, you think? Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this is the other part of this conversation. When you look at, we talked about Concepcion at A&M, because there was movement both in and out of that program. And in offenses where coaches want to throw the ball around. We got a couple coming up here still. Yeah, there's absolutely chances for players to break through. Another one, just to throw it out there more. We talked about Evan Stewart not being on this list, but how about a true freshman, Decorin Moore at Oregon, who everyone I've talked to has said this is obviously a much different physical player than Jeremiah Smith, but a guy that's going to be on this list come, this time next year.
Yeah. I do think someone in the chat was saying that Michigan's wide receiver room was going to be the best in the country, but it went away quickly. Of course they said that. Chase said Deion Burks has to be on this. Of course, another player that, again,
really good.
Not really sure what we know. We've heard that this offense is going to be incredible with their quarterback, but still to be determined. We will see.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, great discussion, great argument. And the problem for some of these wideouts is a lot of this is probably not within their control. Right.
Yeah.
If we have two Auburn wide receivers on this top 10, and now Auburn, Hugh Freeze, quarterbacks have to do their part.
Yeah. Yeah. Oklahoma having a transfer quarterback coming in. Really, really highly hyped, by the way.
Yeah.
Mateer.
For good reason.
Very highly hyped. All right. Let's get to the last three who are very highly hyped as well. But a guy who maybe started the season last year not hyped at all to be on anyone's radar was Jordan Tyson at Arizona State. 75 catches for over 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns. He missed the final 2 games of the season. I'm sure he would have loved to have been in those games. 5 games over 100 receiving yards or more. He's getting his quarterback back. This offense is going to be pretty good. Of course, they are missing some pieces from last season, but I do think a very solid start and base for this Arizona State team.
So the questions we have at Auburn, you look at a situation like this and it's sort of the exact opposite. Doesn't mean it's all going to gel perfectly.
Yes.
But you've got the quarterback in Leavitt. You've got the coach in Dillingham. You're without Cam Scatteraboo, who was the heart and soul of that offense. So again, you're going to have to find that production. My only concern here, because the player is unbelievable and I think could be, produce the best numbers we see all year at this position, is health. Injured 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Last year, obviously played most of the season, was coming on so strong at the end of the year before that injury. And you can't help but wonder, would things have been differently if that did not happen? Regardless, special talent.
Just kidding.
Yeah, no, but special talent, special player, and in a really great position to absolutely explode, because all the foundational pieces are still in place to throw him the football.
Sorry, the special talent, special teams,
yeah,
special plays.
They are. They will.
Sorry,
but we talked about the Big 12 and like what they're going to be. I still think it has to go through Arizona State because of a guy like this and the quarterback and the coach. So they can scheme all day and they're going to find ways to get him open and get him the ball.
Yeah. These next two we have talked about a lot. They were basically the faces of being a young wide receiver that you could rely on last season. But at number 2, we have Ryan Williams, 48 catches for 865 yards and 8 touchdowns. Excellent deep threat, skill set off the charts, impact early. Something also that I want to note about him is that he came in late because he reclassified, and so didn't go through the whole process of spring. He came in, did fall. And still was able to be this impactful this quickly on this Alabama roster. It's kind of very impressive.
Won't be 19 until February, I believe. So
did you guys know that he played last year at 17? I don't think anyone mentioned it at all. I don't think it was brought up at all.
I have to do it because the broadcast, they're going to lean into that immediately. But it is pretty amazing. And there's such a contrast between him and a Jeremiah Smith, because he's not 223 pounds. He's probably 175. They're going to list him a lot higher than he actually is. He's not a big player, but in terms of catch Some of those, like the circus moments last year, were incredible. And let's just be brutally honest about that Alabama offense. Jalen Milroe, for the most part, had some moments, just didn't really mesh all that well. Now, will it mesh better this year? The offensive line is really good. Everything we've heard about Simpson has been very positive at Alabama. So in terms of numbers, obviously you've got players on here that have produced more in terms of potential outside of one additional player that we'll get to momentarily. There's no one on here I think that can do more. This Bama team I like a lot, by the way, a lot. The last couple of weeks, because of Ryan Williams, because of others, I think that Bama has a chance to look a lot like the Bama of old.
Um, a username in the chat that I am a big fan of, not Dabo's burner, that Ryan Williams game versus UGA will forever live rent free in my head.
Unbelievable.
And then Friday Daylights said, I think Williams will be better than Smith this year. He might even go for the Heisman.
He's got a shot because it's just a different style of play. And again, now you have to figure out what to do with him, right? It's such a luxury to have, but now you have to figure out what is he best utilized. I think throwing him the ball deep, even though he's not 6'3", it seems to be working out okay, right? So it's one of those players truly where like there are no limitations on what route is going to be working for him. So I cannot wait to see him develop. And I know we're going to talk about his age again, and I know it's going to be nauseating. It still is crazy that as a sophomore, he's going to play this entire thing out and not be 19. That is still wild to me.
Absolutely. And number one, of course, is Jeremiah Smith, national champion. Some numbers last year just to revisit: 76 catches, 1,300 yards, and 15 touchdowns. Kramer, we had the pleasure of watching him live in the postseason, and just incredible. Like, I mean, also like fun that Ohio State really, like, you could say they sort of like waited on releasing his full potential and what they wanted to do with him until later in the year and in the playoffs. I feel like he's going to even be greater now.
Listening to him talk about taking care of his body and like physically, he was so unique coming into college football, but really didn't know how to train or how to eat. Like, it's fascinating to hear the dialogue happening now where this is a guy that all of a sudden realized, well, I could be faster, I could be bigger, I could be stronger. And he's 6'4", 225 pounds. Came on last year, like, you're right, slow and then immediate. Like, we saw the glimpses, and then I think Ohio State realized what they had. Number one recruit in the country, stayed Ohio State, no drama, wins a national championship. Now 11-1 to win the Heisman. He's the fourth choice on the board. I think, and I also think Paige, he could get a lot better because of his size.
Yeah.
I've seen people like a little overly critical of like his route running. I think he's doing just fine, but it is reasonable to think that a guy like this is going to learn his body a little bit better and become that much more of a threat. So again, new quarterback, a lot of new players on this team that was so good last year. How is that going to come together? We think Sands going to be really good. I think he's going to be really good. If that's the case, then good luck. Like, how do you deal with this team? How do you deal with this player?
Kramer, in the chat, we've got a good one for us. A lot of times during these shows, people tend to lean into maybe some teams that they think we slight most of the time.
Yep.
And Trav in the chat said, y'all make us sane. U of M fans look crazy and give the haters more ammo. Our play will speak for itself. First of all, if you've watched any of the other live shows that we have done that is just ranking any teams, I said Michigan was a lock for the college football playoff because of that schedule, by the way. So just a heads up. And then he also did mention Ryan over Smith because of quarterback situation. Interesting. Okay, so you have more faith in the Alabama quarterback.
I don't know if I would go that far. I think it's reasonable to say, like, I don't think that's a bad take. I don't know if I would agree, but time will tell because both are getting significant reps for the very first time.
Yeah.
Back to Tyson. When we look at this list, right? When we're talking about the players, you're looking at Jordan Tyson. You're looking at the top 5. You're looking at Clemson with multiple players, and you're looking at Sam Leavitt at Arizona State. Certainly the surest things we have on this list. Now, I do think Julian saying by like week 5, we're going to be like, no, we're good here. And oh, by the way, it does help him out that he has some exceptional players to throw to and a really good offensive line. So all these things kind of work within each other very, very nicely. But yes, a lot of this is just going to be about fit, about play calling, and then about, staying healthy and execution.
Trav, somebody in the chat, Marcus Freeman's bodyguard says Smith over Williams for Heisman for me, but it's going to be close. Okay, so a lot of people having some serious faith in each of these guys, whether it be Ryan Williams or Jeremiah Smith. But I do think Jeremiah Smith will be the leader of this. Like you said, I kind of have a little bit, I lean more towards the success of Julian Sayin. And then Robin Wright 44 in the chat. Any wide receivers outside of the top 10 or 15 you think will have a breakout year?
I mentioned Moore at Oregon. I'll keep saying it because I keep hearing it. This was a guy that was so highly recruited, and then obviously the unfortunate injury to Evan Stewart really opens up offensive opportunities for that whole team. This is becoming a position now where there's that breakout possible. And then just to circle back, because I think if you're a Texas fan, you're probably not happy with us about Ryan Wingo. That's a player that I think Sark wanted to integrate kind of slowly into that offense, is probably going to turn it up a notch because physically he belongs clearly. And if they're able to throw the ball, if Arch Manning gets comfortable there, I think Ryan Wingo's a guy that's absolutely in this top 10 next year.
Yeah. I'll give Denzel Boston a shout again. If Washington can be competitive, I think he'll have a big year. I also do want to say in the chat, there was someone who mentioned that they do like to see article versions of this. Actually, Adam Kramer writes a lot of articles for Bleacher Report, so just a plug there that they're, of course, getting his quarterback back, maybe health-wise, staying healthy, maybe playing against a little bit easier defenses. I know Big 12 fans might not love that, but the rest are SEC and Big 10 teams outside of the ACC here. Eric Singleton, transfer. Will he thrive at Auburn? Antonio Williams, at Clemson, will he be able to kind of carve out a specific role for himself and be their wide receiver one with a deep wide receiver room? We've got Elijah Serat, who pay attention to Indiana again. Don't just pay attention to the fact that they're in the rankings and say they're overrated. Watch their games so you can see this guy play. We have Carnell Tate from Ohio State, also the opportunity to have a much bigger role this year, playing again with Jeremiah Smith. Definitely don't want him to be overshadowed. We've got Bryant Wesco, of course, in that Clemson room. 9, we've got Cam Coleman. Again, Auburn's offense really, these two that are here for Auburn, definitely the quarterback position and whether or not that offense runs smoothly is going to determine if they're on this list at the end. And then Zachariah Branch, again, transferring and getting another opportunity to play somewhere different and maybe be the go-to guy for Georgia. Kramer, any other parting thoughts on top 10 wide receivers in college football?
I think the 1, 2, 3 is pretty easy to me right now. 1, 2, 3, you kind of mentioned it. I think it's like you can pencil those guys in, and then it becomes really, really difficult. So I think there's never been more competition for this position. And to see all the different ways that these players are successful, I think is really unique as well. And things are going to change, right? This is the beautiful thing about college football. We have this list that we agreed to, sort of, and we know by week 4, new names that we're not talking about, that not even honorable mentions, are going to emerge as no-brainers. That's the beautiful thing about the sport.
Yes, and if you want to remind us that those players were not on this list initially, you can find us at No Punts Allowed on YouTube. Come in the comments and tell us we forgot your favorite wide receiver. We will be doing Bleacher Report's AP poll reaction show on Sundays. It'll be this Tuesday coming up after week 1. But after that, come every Sunday, hang out with us. We appreciate the chat being so lively. And for Paige and Adam, thanks so much for hanging out.